This is the Bijou Baker. This is Maria. I'm going to talk to you today about tools. And by tools, it's everything you're going to need for your baking, the end result. Pans and spatulas and the differences between the two, and stuff that you need and stuff that you really don't need, but they're fun to have. Huge addiction of mine, like I've said. When it comes time to start piling up filling your toolbox with all these great things, I really want you to be penny wise, because it will matter, and this stuff does add up. So if there is something that you don't need to buy, chances are I know an alternative, very inexpensive way to get the same result. So let's just go off with a few things that I know you absolutely cannot do without, aside from the oven and all those other things. But your baking pans. I've had these baking pans since my very first cake, and these are 8-inch pans. I usually have 3 of them, because a good recipe for, especially like a dessert cake, you'll have 3 layers. You can take a cake that has a good leveling, exactly 2 inches. These are 2 inches thick. It's a very steady, sturdy metal. And once it's baked and it's level and it's perfect, you can cut that in half and then, make 3 levels with 2 from here and 1 from the other one. And that's absolutely okay. And then I'll show you 100 different little tricks, okay, maybe 20, on what to do with that extra cake. And yeah, believe it or not, you can actually have extra cake. But there's a bunch of things to do with it that'll really make it, you'll almost want to go out of your way to have extra cake. So cake pans of all shapes and sizes, and I just got lucky with mine because they can get a little pricey. Again, look for your coupons and your other stores that will share this stuff and get a good sale. You can get them online, but I don't know that they're going to be a better value than like at the local cake stores and such. So I'm one for instant gratification, so I'd rather go down and pick it up for about the same price as having to wait for Amazon. I know. Okay, so cake pans. Many different shapes, many different sizes. They're all going to do something different. I've had, it's funny, you see these cake shows and they have just the most beautiful brand new cake pans. These puppies have been through the ringer, and ring away, baby, because they still work like the brand new ones. So why not use them? Well, I'm not that person that'll just throw it away because it's not pretty anymore. Cupcake pans. You'll be wanting those. The mini and the large. And did you know that there are more than one size cupcake liners? There are. You've got your minis, which when they're measured, they go from here to here. Okay? And then your standard. Your standard is about 2.5 by 1.25. This takes 1/4 cup of cake mix to fill. If by some chance you don't want to use homemade cake, you want to just use a store-bought, let me tell you something about that, okay? These store-bought cake companies have spent hundreds and thousands of dollars to perfect just the right recipe. Go down and pick it up for $1.25. There is nothing wrong with that if that's not the way you want to go. So, and they're perfect and they're delicious, and so if that's what you want to do, one box cake will make 24 cupcakes of the standard size at 1/4 cup in each cupcake, which is going to give you the perfect leveled cupcake. We'll talk about the crowning of cupcakes and cakes another time, but for right now, just keep that in mind. And so when you are buying your cupcakes, if you get the jumbos, you're not going to get 24, and they're probably not going to fit in your standard cupcake pans anyway. So keep that in mind. Another thing you'll want to get is a really good serrated knife. This sucker has been with me for decades, and I've never had to sharpen it. But this is what you want if you're going to have a big cake. If you're doing a half sheet or even a full sheet, which is only 2 half sheets put together. I know, right? Standard math. This is going to be perfect for sawing it in half to cut it and fill it. Believe it or not, you'll be able to learn that, and you'll do it with great confidence, and it won't scare you like it might right now. You'll also want to get a rolling pin for the rolled out cookies or for pie crust or other things. Just make sure that it rolls easily. This one I've used over and over because it's just, it comes apart easy to clean. I'm not quite sure what it's made out of, but it's very cool. And it's perfect for pie crusts and rolled out cookies because it doesn't, that stuff doesn't really stick to it. But you always flour your rolling pins anyway. That's episode blah 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 for another time. The thing I would never ever even turn my oven on unless I had would be parchment paper. Parchment paper is God's way of saying I really love you. And it comes in rolls or it comes in individual cutout sheets. The sheets are perfect. It's 8-inch. You just pop it right in the pan, and that's it. I cannot tell you the last time I buttered and floured a cake. You don't have to. When you have your parchment paper in your pan, your cake is baking. It's nice. It's out. It's cold. It will start to shrink. When it starts to shrink, it's going to pull away from the edges, so you don't need to flour or what, I don't even know the procedure anymore. Butter and flour. Grease and flour. You don't need to do that. The absolute most you'll have to do is run a spatula or a knife or anything around the edges just to give it a clean, and then it will pop out. When you're making a cake, remember that the bottom is always the top. I'll break that down later, but I just kind of want you to get familiar with that term. Parchment paper for cupcakes, cookies, cakes, bars, anything that touches this stuff, it's not going to stick. I make caramels at Christmas. I put them on here. That stuff just peels off like there's nothing to it, and it's effortless. And you throw it away and you're done. I love effortless. Spatulas. There's a bunch of different spatulas, and they're all so different. This puppy, this is when I have some serious work to do. It's good and firm and has just a little bit of flexibility in that. You see that? Yeah, let me cover my face with that. This one has a little bit more flexibility. So when you're using like mousse or something really light, whipped creamy, this is what you want. You want something a little less rigid. This sucker is not going to give. There's very little, but it will scrape the heck out of a bowl perfectly. And when you see these shows where they take their bowl and they're mixing it and they're putting it in a thing, and you have 4 cups of filling left in that thing. It kills me. Not me. I'm gonna scrape this sucker and make sure that every drop is in my pan to bake. I want every bit of that cake in there. Later on, when we get into baking, you're gonna want all these different spatulas. This is an offset spatula because it is, well, offset. It has a little bit of a dip right here, and it's perfect for when you're doing your icing and you want to just get a really good leveling on the top of your cake. You could do that with this, but can you see if this is the cake? If this is the cake and I want to level it, my hand has to be just below it. Whereas if this is the cake and I want to level it, I can keep my hand above it and have greater control. So we'll break that down later as we use them, and they come in all sorts of sizes. This sucker will help you later on when you want to like take a cheesecake off of the rack and then put it onto your plate, which is another thing you're going to want to really start investing in is cake plates. Because when you start baking, you're going to need something pretty to put it on. That's annoying. So keep your cake plates in mind. A good pastry cutter. When we get into pies and pie crusts, you're going to want this if you don't have a food processor. Even if you do have a food processor, a lot of times I'll prefer to do this. It's just quicker and easier, and I like that. Turntables are going to be a must when you start decorating. It turns right and it turns left. So you get a great bargain in that. And there's just a whole bunch of different ones to choose from. I've had one when I first started baking, and I've been using it ever since. Another thing is going to be cooling racks. Now, these things I've had for a long time. Everything I've had, I'm telling you, I use hard. So I'll have these up, and I'll have my cookies cooling. And the reason you want cooling racks is because when it's cooling, you want the air to go on top and on the sides and on the bottom. And when the air is circulating it, you're gonna get, it's gonna cool down better. It's gonna cool down more even. Everything is about even. So remember that. A good cookie sheet, a good cake pan,